Hello, Hive. Welcome back to our book study on Mudhouse Sabbath. I wonder how all of you are doing. Before we start, I would love to hear from you and hear how you're doing. I think that people are kind of all over the place right now, and so we just want to know that you're okay and hear how we can support you. Oh, there's a stapler in front of my... Sorry about that. So we'd love to hear how you're doing and see how we can support you. So please let us know and please reach out. All right, let's take a deep breath and get ready. So this chapter was, hey Amy, yeah, I moved it. I was trying to prop this up. I came to my office to get some things. We're about to, I think, shelter in place here. And so I'm getting things together to be able to keep reaching out to the church community without office supplies. So the next chapter that we read is called, it's about aging. So it's the process of aging and the Jewish customs of aging and how you take care of those who you love who are aging. So I don't have a ton to say today because I think that it's just really worth reading the chapter. But really more than anything, what it brought up for me was questions. So I want to pose some of those questions to you today. So the first thing is, Lauren talks a lot about caring for the elderly, even if you don't want to, because it's an important part of the Jewish religion and it's an important part of the family system. She talks about when she cared for her mother. Her mother had cancer and she cared for her mother, even though it was hard because her mother cared for her. And her mother did the same thing for her grandmother and her sister did the same thing. And she talked about that, the importance of that within the family system. And I think that a lot of other religions and cultures do that better than others. I think if you look at what's happening in Italy right now, I feel both heartbroken and just in awe of the family systems there and how everyone takes care of their elderly, and the family system is so tight, and that may be part of the reason why the disease spread there. And so I think that it's important to talk about what Lauren talks about in this book is how aging reminds us of death, and that's uncomfortable, and it's important to sit with that and to think about the holiness of aging and the holiness of death and the holiness of a life lived well and preparing well for death. So one of the things that she brought up in the questions that she had is that there's a spirituality to aging. So there's a spirituality to aging because when you're aging, and you're aware that you're aging and you're not fighting against the aging and trying to be an 80-year-old looking like a 30-year-old, you're being honest about preparing for your death. So I'm curious if you've ever thought about that and if that's something that you've helped a family member through, or if you're older, if it's something that you're going through is thinking about aging as a preparation for death. She also talks about the slow progress of aging, that, if life is lived in this particular perfect way and you live until you're, 80, 90, that aging is slow and therefore death is slow too. And so she asks, what does that teach you about death? And she also asks, what is the benefit of an old soul, and what can an old soul teach the rest of us? So I thought that was a good question, is what does an old soul have to teach the rest of us? She also talks about one of the reasons that it's important for people to care for their elderly is that community is important. She says that memory happens in community and that communities tell us who we are. That happens in a couple of ways. First of all, you think of how, your older grandparent holds all of these memories. When I first moved to this church where I've been for a couple of months, one of the most beautiful things that I did was, not that I did, but one of the most beautiful things I received was I came up here on a Saturday morning because there's an older couple who helped start the church in the 50s, and they very faithfully come up to the church every Saturday morning, and they dust and they vacuum the sanctuary. So I came up to meet them, and what I was blessed with was hearing the stories of the church. I got to hear the whole history of the church, the history that I've not yet seen written down anywhere. And it was quite beautiful to learn about how the pews got here and how our altar is the altar that used to be in another church an hour away that redid their sanctuary. So then I met that priest and told that priest about it, and that priest wants to come visit. And so our history is all tied up in memory, and so people, older people will often be the holders of those memories. So that's one thing. But the other thing that she brought up and that it got me thinking about, she talks about when a younger family might leave everything to go take care of an older relative, or they might clean out a room in their home like her mother did for her grandmother, so that the older family member can move in, and how at some point that memory shifts and the younger family members might become the memory holders for the older family members, especially if they experience like dementia and things like that. So I wonder if, you have any experience or stories with that, either being the one who benefits from the blessing of hearing the memories of someone older in your life, or if you've actually been that memory keeper for someone who's begun to age and lose their memory. So I thought that was pretty helpful too. All right, so I'm going to leave you with two kind of pieces of homework here tonight. One is really just for you to do, and you can definitely share your insights. And the other one is a conversation that I'd love us to have. So the thing I'd love for you to do is to take some time and read Psalm 71. If you don't have a Bible or a Torah or whatever, Google it. And so Psalm 72, especially verses 9 and 18, which I'll read to you real quick. Sorry, this coronavirus thing, I don't have my normal setup and I'm using my phone. All right, it says Psalm 71:9 says, "Do not cast me off in the time of old age. Do not forsake me when my strength is spent." And then read the whole chapter, but look especially at that verse and verse 18 that says, "So even to old age and gray hairs, O God, do not forsake me, until I proclaim your might to all generations to come." So the question here, when you read this, is what does the writer, and it may be David, what is the writer saying or fearing or desiring about old age? Is it something that you can relate to? And then what about you? If you're honest with yourself about aging and graying and wrinkling and nearing the end of life or facing death, what do you feel about that? And have you been honest with yourself about what you feel about that? And I think it might be important to even ask yourself, is there some joy in aging? What is the joy in aging? Can you see that in the Psalm? And if it's not in the Psalm, what would you put in it? So there's that. All right. And then the question I have for all of us that I would love to discuss in the questions underneath this video, if you would, is how do we care for our elderly right now? How do we care for our elderly right now during the coronavirus? I've been hearing story after story of people who are in hospitals and homes who, elderly homes and retirement homes who are no longer allowed to have visitors. And in some places it's become even more extreme than that. Not only are they not allowed to have visitors, but some of them are not even allowed to visit with each other in the communities. And so what is something that we can do to care for our elders in this time? Acknowledging that keeping that social distancing is especially important for people who are older because they're more at risk. But what is it that we can do to keep them connected to the community? What is it that we can do? Is there someone you can call? They still have their phones. I called someone at my church today who I needed to call like a week or two ago, an elderly woman at church, and it was just so delightful to talk to her. We talked for a long time, and people have been checking in on her and calling her, and that's life-giving to her because no one comes in her home except for her caretaker. So what can you do? I've seen some great things about people writing notes. Oh, Amy says the biggest thing for her has been setting a weekly reminder to call her grandmother. It's something that she really looks forward to. Yeah. Can you check on your family members? And then are there other people in your community who maybe don't have family who you can check on? And I'm sure there's other great ideas. I saw someone else who's a member of the Hive who talked about her kids sending drawings to people who are shut in or in retirement homes. So what can you do? How can you reach out? How can you connect with them? All right, I have held this shaky camera enough and I've rambled enough. So I hope that you're all having a really wonderful day. Continue to check in. Let us know how you're doing. Be well. Take care, busy bees.